Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning, everyone. Good to be with you.
All right, episode 335. I try to remember to say that and don't always do that, but anyway, we're slowly climbing up the ladder.
Yeah, that's how they see. You think about that. That's what 6, 7 years, right?
Right, and that's with all the interruptions that I put in there because of
Yeah,
my other assignments and stuff like that. So it's, if we had been able to go 52 weeks, solid without missing, we'd be up there even more so. And that's only since I started counting this version of the show. I keep thinking, I should have counted the other versions, but especially the one where you joined me for that on the right wing news thing
yeah.
before they got banned from Facebook and deleted because they had an audience.
They did. They had a huge audience.
They had a huge audience that you rarely had seen back in the day. So anyway, that's what happens in life. It comes and it goes. Stay la vie.
Yeah.
All right. Well, brief weather report. We're getting a fair amount of rain. So for
Finally, yeah. Like it was dirt dry here for 6 weeks, 8 weeks. It's been very dry, very cool here since like the middle of August, pretty much.
Yeah, I noticed how my lawn had gone from looking fairly green to looking very patchy.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, mine too.
it's late. It's late in the season. We're getting down where the grass doesn't really grow as much as it does during the summer, but hopefully some of this will help it for going forward here a little bit. But
Yeah, it gets a lot darker this month. You lose where we live. You lose about 75 minutes of daylight in September.
yeah,
That's just
we have been definitely losing the time, because it's like, when I love the time when I could walk out of the gym at 6:30, and it'd still there'd be daylight. Now you're still kind of it's getting darker.
yeah.
You're still having to use the headlights. I have an occasional morning church meeting at 7 a.m. on a Sunday, and I'm like, wait a minute here. It's like actually have to start. I'm gonna have to figure out a different plan here because I was using natural daylight. There's almost no natural daylights now.
Right. Yeah. It was like we were sitting in church Sunday morning and waiting on it to start at 7:30, and I'm like, man, it's like it's still dark.
Yeah, I don't, and I don't pay. I admit that I don't pay that much attention year to year about these things, but I guess I get older. I'm like, man, it's just like getting darker and darker. But this is what this is what we live here. This is exactly what we expect with the change of seasons as time moves along. We'll get our daylight back. Next summer and go through that pattern all over again.
Yeah.
So, but we use electricity and artificial light
That's right.
to bring us into your home. All right. Well, we have there's definitely some news to cover. So it was about what, maybe a couple of hours after we got off the air last week that I was checking. I don't know if I was checking my phone or whatever it was, and then I saw that Charlie Kirk had been shot at a speaking event at Utah Valley University. Um, I was in disbelief, and that obviously the initial things. Anytime something like this happens, you don't get a lot of information to people. There's a lot of confusion. It's just it's very chaotic and things like that. But a few hours later, the president announced that Charlie Kirk had died from that gunshot wound to the neck. It was I don't know. I mean, I think it does. I think it did feel surreal to a lot of people. I had so I have involvement with a lot of these young missionaries that come and serve for 18 months or 24 months here in the DC area, and most of them are from Utah, Idaho, some from California, Arizona, things like that. And most of them also go to school in Utah. Majority of them go to school at Brigham Young University, but others will also go to school at UVU. And we definitely had a number of those.
Right across the street.
It's down the road. I would say that you're talking about, I haven't really measured it, but give me, I would say 5 to 7 miles down the road or something like that. Because the Y is closer to the mountains, whereas
Mhm.
UVU is right by the freeway and closer to the water,
Gotcha.
to Lake Geneva thing. So
Because
that's
I've been there. Seen the campus. It's pretty
yeah,
campus.
and that, so that one of the first things is, I was like, okay, so I have driven past that campus. I don't even know how many times, because I've got a brother-in-law and nephews and nieces and whatnot that live out there. I mean, my son's living out in Utah, so I've been on the freeway, and we stay in Provo, which means that if we want to go anywhere outside of Provo, we are basically getting off at the ramp, and the school is right to our right.
Yeah.
It's right there. And it used to be, I think, Utah Valley State College, 20, 30 years ago. So they have grown. They are the largest university in Utah. They have 46,000 students enrolled. Uh, BYU doesn't have quite as many. BYU has got kind of an enrollment cap because they've
Right.
just run out of space. They
Right.
they've
And BYU is not big on online, right? They want you to
No,
go.
they're not, they have a whole different program for online. I mean, there's a for international learners and other people who are trying to get back in. They have a thing called BYU Pathways, which is all online. But BYU basically, BYU is pretty much an in-person classroom situation.
Right.
But the campus is situated such that, with the housing that surrounds it, with the mountains that buffer it, that they basically, if they want more capacity for more classrooms, they would have to tear down something and build it higher. And they really don't do that very often. They've been modernizing the university over the last couple of decades, where they've built better dorms, newer classrooms and things like that. But normally at BYU, I think you get 35,000. And if you can't get into BYU, a lot of students wind up going to UVU, hoping that they can then apply to BYU later.
Right.
Um, but I do remember, I did see an Instagram post reel by one of my former missionaries, and he had been there. He was in his car, and he was wearing a MAGA hat and everything like this, and he was just saying, he goes, "I never saw so much blood in my entire life." So he must have been fairly close. Now the guy's also 6'10", so on top of that, so he probably has a good
He
view
gets
of
to see
everything.
whatever he's looking at.
Yeah,
There's no
really.
standing in his way.
He's got a clear view. There's not too many people that are going to get in his way. Uh, but it's pretty shocking for people that you're having this event, and everything, and then this happens. Um, anyway, I will stop here. I'll let you give your thoughts, and we'll kind of go back and forth a little bit.
Well, one thing is like I think the me's and U's of the world is kind of hits very close to home, because he was killed for doing essentially what we do for a living, right? This is another, if we were plumbers, this is another plumber dying for plumbing, right? I mean, this is what we do. We debate issues. We come up with research that backs our position. We market the research. We try to take on the enemies. The other side or whatever. I mean, this is what we did. We're smaller scale. We didn't have his audience, right? Because the guy you got to hand it to him. He was a brilliant policy entrepreneur, as good as we have ever seen. He has massive organization signing up voters all over the country. A faith organization that's standalone on its own, an action organization, which means they can advocate for legislation. All this by 31. He had thousands of employees. He really, like what we do. He was really doing it on his own on a huge scale at a young age, right? So very accomplished, smart guy. And naturally curious, autodidact, self-taught. That's why, like he says, good college is a scam, but that's only true if you're not going to go, if you go do all that reading that he's done on your own, right? If the books are out there, and the learning is out there, it's available, the knowledge is available. But like, unless we're directed there by a professor or program and so forth, most of us don't take it upon ourselves to go do that, right? To go learn things that you can't immediately turn into cash, uh, you know, at the rate and the amount that he was doing. So I think that's part of why, like the me's and you's of the world, it hits really hard because that it really could have been us, right? And we're sort of because you go on there like we get messages in this show, right, from people that they're unhinged and they're haters and because these people are angry. They're losing. They know they're losing. They don't understand why America won't come around to their way to thinking, and they're really, really bitter, and they're really, really angry, and they're really, really increasingly capable of violence.
Yeah. So, I agree with you on, I mean, what Charlie had done. So, up until this point in time, um, I had not paid a lot of attention to Charlie Kirk. I didn't really care. I mean, I don't know. I just had this feeling that I think probably because of the early stuff with him and Candace Owens, and Candace Owens kind of has gone off her rocker as far as I'm concerned. And so I think I'm still mentally attaching the two of them together,
Right.
even though they're completely opposite at this point. Um, but after his death, I want to, I did go and look at the TPUSA website and some of the things that they had put up there. Now, websites sometimes, over, they kind of just, they pad the numbers a little bit, but even if you padded the numbers by a lot, it's still a lot. He's got there because I think they're showing, they're saying 3,500 chapters, 2,000 student organizations, 800 faith-based groups, and my thoughts were just like, wow, okay. Even if it's a smaller fraction of that, even the numbers are overstated by say 10 or 15% or whatever. This to me was extremely impressive because he wove the faith-based and the secular. I mean, he just basically took all sides and he put them together, and he says, and you can do this. You can take the faith-based people and you can take the other people and you can put them on the same page and get them active and motivated to do things. And then to see, I mean, really, by the age of 31, a guy who basically, didn't go to college, he didn't find that to be to his liking. So, he goes on and builds this organization, in less than, 13, the organization already was going well before, this. I mean, so it didn't even take him the 13 years to build it. He had already built it before. But this was a massive organization and what it was able to do, and you can see the effect it had on President Trump, Vice President Vance, and a lot of other conservatives and others around the country, as well as around the world, with this, because it was shocking. But we did lose a very unique person here at this time at a very, very young age, in a tragic situation. And I came away with this with a lot more respect for Charlie Kirk than I had before, and a lot more admiration for than I had before. And I thought, and to see the misrepresentations of him by others, in terms of what he said, not put things fully in context and stuff like that. That kind of bothered me. I didn't want to get into this knee-jerk reaction from the right or the left about, where they start fighting and they start making this a big political, throwdown of just throwing words at each other. I think we're bigger and better than that. But one of the things I didn't realize until this too was how Charlie was basically, what he was doing is he has, kind of what was it called, the ask me anything or whatever kind of thing.
Prove me wrong.
Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong.
Yeah.
So prove me wrong. So he'd sit there and people would line up and they would ask him questions. He would debate them. Now, I don't know about you, but my feeling is that, you have to be extremely well taught, well learned, well read, something to that effect, and extremely confident that you can take all comers. Because particularly when the left shows up to these things, they're going to throw out a lot of stuff and a lot of garbage. that you're going to have to dissect and just basically take apart immediately.
Yeah,
And
real time.
Charlie could do that. And then it's like, okay, this was amazing. I don't know how you replace a Charlie Kirk. This was just so unique how he did this. And I think that's also why you had a lot of people who are willing to follow him, like this, because he could take with respect, he could take
Right.
the left and he would dissect their arguments. And it was not this shout fest. It was not these things of where they're just hurling insults at each other. He just did this on a range of subjects. It was
Yeah.
truly amazing.
Yeah. If you watch those reels, he's just taking on all kinds of questions and he's got good, complex answers to them. I saw somebody on X the other day. They're like, well, they only show the reels where, he quote won the fight, right? They don't show when the student tears him apart, right? So here's one where the student tears him apart. So there's a reel and one of the, Charlie went into all kinds of like enemy territory to debate college campuses. There's a porn talk show, a real prominent online talk show that deals with porn people, right? OnlyFans and all that stuff. He went on that and talked about, talked to them, took on, those people like, how can you tell me my morals are bad? It's like, and he went to Oxford, right? And he debated in the Oxford Debating Society, right? And so a kid gets up there, and they're obviously smart people, or they wouldn't be there, right? And so this kid is going to show everybody how smart he is, and Charlie's like, well, in the Bible, the laws that we live by are the New Testament, right? Where Jesus said in the latter days, these words shall guide you. Love your neighbor as yourself, love God above all others, right? So the guy goes, well, that's all right. How do you explain this? And he starts listing out quotes from Leviticus, Deuteronomy, the Talmud, the part that Jesus is saying that's not where we are anymore, right? And he just like this kid, he's like, he feels real smart because he's looked up all these Bible verses from the Talmud, but he was completely, it didn't occur to him that this was Old Testament and this is exactly what Charlie had just said. And so the guy makes a real fool of himself trying to show Charlie to be stupid. And, and of course the leftists who posted like, look, this guy take Charlie apart. Well, it's like, you don't know the Bible either, So, there's all that kind of stuff, but he took on, all kinds of arguments and he did it. And like people would start yelling at the speaker, cause like people would come up and tell him he hates gays or whatever. And people would, shout them down. And he said, no, let them have their say, so he was respectful of even the speakers who were attacking him. Right. And he tried to get them on a level where they could, explain your views, tell me what's wrong. And let's see let's see who understands what. Right. And who else does that in society? And I don't know if you saw this, but people have been posting this George Carlin routine. He goes, who is it we assassinate? The people who tell us to love and live in peace together. Bam. Got to get them out of the way. And he's like the Kennedys, Abraham Lincoln, Jesus Christ. We killed all of them for saying, be peaceful and get along together. So that's basically what it was.
I mean, I don't know where our country is going. I mean, we just seem to see the increasing levels of violence against politicians on both sides, right? I mean, this has not been restricted to Charlie Kirk. I mean, his is the most tragic. I mean, we had Trump, but we also had the firebombing, of Josh Shapiro's house.
Well, that was a pro-Hamas guy. I don't think he was.
Yeah, but I'm just saying. I mean, it happens. I mean, they're not just people aren't just targeting right wingers, or conservatives. I mean, Democrats and left wingers are also being attacked for their viewpoints by other crazy people. I mean, there are just a bunch of crazy people running around here doing that. The situation with the former, House Speaker in Minnesota,
Right.
in her
home by, that's another thing is what's going on here is like the left is trying to absolve itself of all this. The guy who killed her worked for Governor Walz, who is not a conservative, right? You kind of have to be Democrat to get in the door there. And he killed them because they refused to support radical leftist legislation. They were killed for not being leftist enough by a leftist, right? A guy he had been for Trump years ago, but he's not a Trump guy at that point, right? He's completely flipped. The other thing is, like, the people who are, red light, all the red lights should be flashing, are the people who go from hardcore of one to hardcore of the other. Either way, you go from hardcore leftist to hardcore rightist. I worry about those guys, and I worry about the people that go the other way. Right? Something happened to you. That's what happened with the guy in Utah, right? He grew up in a conservative, I guess, Latter-day Saints family, right? Isn't that right?
That's what we hear. Yeah.
Whole family was like that. And this guy, he was the wild child of the family, right? And he decided, I reject all that. I'm something else. So it doesn't matter that his parents were that, because he's not that. He was something else. He became something else, for better or for worse. And it looks like for worse.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't follow. I mean, he didn't follow. What I would say is the traditional path. As he got older, because he didn't. He chose not to go on a mission, which doesn't happen very often. I mean, there's a percentage that don't go for various reasons, but he falls into that group. But, and he was going to go to school, had some scholarship, but as his parents were saying, it's like, his ideology changed over the last year or so, like that.
Yeah.
And then we have stories about, his roommate was this transgender, lover and stuff like that. And so we see just these things that are coming out and about where, he had just changed. He had just changed. And, you may not, you may not be a Spencer Cox fan. I certainly have never been a great Governor Cox fan. Very middle of the road guy, in Utah. But I thought, immediately after all of this had happened, when he had his press conference and he was talking to everybody, that I thought he did a very good job of trying to set a new tone, or trying to keep people from getting overly excited. Because both sides, I mean, look, there's fringes on both sides. This kind of stuff the fringes always used to drive me nuts. When AIM used to hold conferences around the country, the thing that always make me go, ugh, is the one person who registered for the conference but was a complete nutcase. And you had to deal with them for 2 days. Right. They wouldn't let go. It's like, what are we going to do? And this was way before the internet. This is way before. And I'm just like, oh, this is what we get. You got to take the good with the bad in your movement. But boy, it just sometimes it makes you just go, oh, what is going on here? How do we deal with that? And we do have fringes on both sides. And I do think, I think Cox, he's made this part of his mantra anyway on social media, where he calls social media cancer, because it has such an impact on our young people that they can go down that rabbit hole. They can just get so deeply involved, they lose all touch with reality. This kid, I think he spent a lot of time gaming too. I think, this is also a problem for a lot of the young culture, where they just basically separate themselves from reality, and their life is gaming and social media, getting into the dark web, conspiracy theories, whatever it is, and they just get turned around. And the next thing you know, they go find a gun. And in Utah, not hard to find a gun in a household, and then he found a spot and then shot Charlie Kirk to death. I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered in terms of, what kind of security, they were supposed to provide, they should have had for that event. But,
he traveled around with security. Like, if you watch those reels, there's the same 4 or 5 guys standing around that tent. Right. So, he had people that he trusted to do that. But this was a long range sniper fire. It's not the kind of thing you defend against.
Yeah. Right? It's not something that just a casual person can do. There's a lot of debate about how much skill it took. It's still, look, anytime you fire a weapon, and you hit somebody like that, it still takes some skill, and 200 yards. I mean, it's not the furthest distance, type of thing like that. It's not like you're going to be a professional sniper over, say, but he did what he wanted to do, and with Utah, they have the death penalty out there, so that's on the table. He's got a bunch of other charges that he's facing. You know, it's unfortunate because he's completely ruined his life. He's made his family, his poor family is going to be miserable. They're going to be tagged, with this forever. Um,
Could you
Utah,
imagine the dad when he realized, I got to go turn my son in
yeah,
for the rest of his life, if he
yeah,
even gets a life.
right.
I'm never going to see him again. He's going in the pen. That's it.
Yeah, no, I mean this is serious, and yeah, no, I mean you have to admire the parents for having the courage to do that rather than try to hide this and everything else. They had the fortitude to go ahead and say the right thing to do is that we have to turn him in. He needs to answer for this crime,
Yeah.
and everything. Utah Valley, I feel for the student body. I feel for the administration because it's a good school. It's a decent school,
Yeah.
and everything like this. But there will be there'll be questions that'll
We'll
just kind
be
of
thinking
reverberate.
about this for years. This will
Yeah,
be
for a
part
long,
of
long time.
their legacy,
Right. Yeah, and it's an unfortunate part of their legacy now. I mean, now it's going to be hard for me. When I go out to Utah at the end of the month, it's going to be hard for me not to think about, you know, what happened over there, and maybe even stopping by somewhere just to kind of walk around a little bit. My youngest nephew graduated from UVU this past year, so I haven't talked to him, but I'll see him in a couple of weeks, and so I'm going to ask him what he thinks about that as now an alum, and how that how, if that if he has an effect, it and then BYU, being up the road, they BYU, what they had to do, they're right in the midst of a week where they were celebrating the 150th anniversary of the school, and once that shooting took place, everything halted. In that terms of that, they were not going to. They delayed all the celebrations, everything that they'd done at that point. Nothing else. They postponed everything else that was scheduled. In respect for what had happened, even though it wasn't on their campus, but it was the state of Utah, right? And this is where you come together and you say, yeah, this is all of us, that it affects every single person in the state of Utah, and then goes beyond that. Um, but I was thinking, there's so many stories about educators and how they've reacted to this, and they've reacted poorly to this in the classroom. Some of them have been fired, some have been suspended. Uh, I think there was a story. There was a news anchor who had been suspended somewhere for her remarks. She was supposed to be doing a consumer segment, but she had trained under Charlie Kirk, so she got she kind of made a tribute to Charlie Kirk, and then she decided to resign. As a part of that, it's like if the station can't recognize that this person was deeply affected by this because she had worked for him, and give her a little bit of time like that, then I think there's some problems here that we have. It's just there's still a lot of intolerance about the viewpoint, of if you support Charlie Kirk. I mean, even the vigils, we had some leftists get in there and try to disrupt or whatever, but the vigils, were amazing. I mean, the
Yeah.
number of people that came out across the country to memorialize and kind of just try to remember,
Huge,
Charlie Kirk.
huge things there because the crowds were enormous at some of these things, 100,000
Right.
or more. And the prayer was a key component of this, right? It's the voter turnout aspect of Charlie Kirk is not what was getting lamented here. What was getting lamented is all the people he led to God.
Yeah.
You know, So the people who talk about carrying forth his movement, from what I can tell, most of them are talking about that part of it. The we're going to keep trying to get men to take responsibility, their families, and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, we also have his widow Erica Kirk with some very strong statements afterwards. That was very powerful to see somebody just after losing her husband like that to come out and do that. TPUSA, as I understand, has seen a tremendous surge in interest for starting chapters as a result.
Right.
There was a GoFundMe for the Kirk family, which went into the millions of dollars. Now, I did see it. I had
Bill
a guy
Ackman set up his own fund, make sure that their kids are taken care of forever.
Yeah, so there was somebody who on my one of my Facebook, acquaintances, I'll call him because I don't know who this person really is, and just put a post up about saying that someone who knows about financial, issues and stuff like that had delved into Charlie's finances as much as they could, and estimated that with insurance and everything else, that he'd be worth about $12 million, which and he left it at that. He didn't he didn't say that was good or bad. And I noticed as I look at some of the comments, it's like people were like, so what are you implying here? What's the deal here? As if it's like Charlie, he should not have accumulated wealth. Well, I'm sorry, he did something. He did a remarkable thing. He built an organization. He if you look at conservative leaders, I'm sure if you look at the liberal leaders, a lot of groups that are led by these single personas, kind of these just the people who are the face, the organization.
Right.
They pay themselves very well, in the they raise a lot of money, they pay themselves well. That's fine. I mean, there's they deserve whatever they can earn and all of that. And there's nothing wrong with accumulating wealth in this country.
I mean, what my understanding is he paid himself about $300,000, which I guess sounds like a lot, but really in the the amount of money that they were generating, that's not a lot. That's leaving a lot of money on the table.
Right. If that's true based on their overall fundraising, he wasn't paying himself a lot,
No.
but anyway, so he accumulated something. I'm sure he wasn't. I don't think he was a big spender per se, but yeah, thanks to Bill Ackman here and in the GoFundMe campaign, I think the Kirk family will not have to worry about education
right.
and a lot of other things.
$1 million to keep his programs going from the Daily Wire gave Turning Point $1 million.
Wow.
And I don't know what to make of this, but Ben Shapiro said that they were doing it so he could continue to further the word of Jesus Christ. Now, why is Ben Shapiro saying that?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's really
well. That's interesting too. I mean, I knew Ben back in the day when he was a college student.
Yeah, I remember Ben being like 14 and coming to Kirk.
Yeah, exactly. When he was a rising star, and we didn't really realize how much of a rising star he was going to be.
Yeah,
it was kind of like sometimes I kick myself with some of these people too, because I mean, Ben and I we haven't conversed for years, but we had remained friends over the years. But Peter Thiel, right, the great libertarian, he's behind PayPal and a whole bunch of other things, right? So there's an outfit called the Independent Institute out in Oakland, California. And they had Thiel and a guy named David Sachs had written a book kind of about colleges and political correctness and stuff like that. And we actually used that book at AIA. We actually put out that book to our donors and stuff like that. I'm like, to me, there's just a couple of bright college kids. Years later, I'm looking, I'm like, holy moly, these guys have they've raked it in.
They're both billionaires.
They hit the jackpot. You don't hear as much about David Sachs. You hear more about Peter Thiel. But I'm just like, wait a minute. It's like, I cannot believe it. These guys that I knew, when they wrote this book that nobody ever talks about, they're doing all this stuff.
Sachs is close to Trump.
Yeah.
Him and Trump are very close.
Yeah. So it is amazing to see how this has moved on. That $1 million from Daily Wire too. This also speaks of the immense success of Ben Shapiro.
Yeah,
You know
they
what
have
he
$1
has
million
done.
to give a, I guess in essence, a rival organization.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, everybody's competing for these eyeballs and all these kinds of things. Um, I mean, the Daily Wire's, I mean, they're not this activist student organization. They do
Right.
so many. They do other things, but it's interesting to see. It is heartening to see other conservatives like that organizations willing to go ahead and donate to to
Yeah.
to
Not
keep the U.S.
jealous. The opposite of jealous.
Right, 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 right. And that to me that had been always had been kind of this big, pet peeve of mine with conservative organizations. It's just that they everybody treated everybody as a rival, and they wouldn't, it was hard to get them to work together for certain things. And we ran into that on a trying to do something with Rush Limbaugh and get other organizations behind us to help get him to do something. And the reaction, my staffers had from virtually every organization she contacted was, well, what's in it for us? And it's like, it's not about what's in it for us or you, it's what's in it for all of us. The movement benefits by doing this together. This
Right.
is not a singular function of, it's like, it's only going to, how does it benefit, MRC or AIM, Heritage Foundation, Free Congress, all these things. If we work together on some of these things, we are much more powerful and unified. That is much better for us overall, rather than having a bunch of different organizations fighting for the same dollar or fighting each other in a lot of cases, which
We'll
Republicans are
say
very good at.
Heritage is a kind of exception to that. They have
Yeah,
shared and been generous to other
yeah. I mean,
organizations.
Heritage is a behemoth, so
Yeah.
they're very good at what they do.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
they've always kind of understood this, rising tide lifts all boats mentality
yeah.
too.
Right. So, but I'm just saying in general with the conservative movement, you just have too many of them that are looking for it from their perspective only and not from the movement perspective. And that always bothered me, and I don't know, maybe it was just me, but it was always something that's just kind of like, this is very frustrating to me when that happens. Uh, yeah. So we'll have to see how what happens here, when they put this guy up to trial or do whatever they need to do next, and everything like that. Um, and whether or not we get some of the rhetoric to tone down a little bit as
Right.
we move on.
No,
And
yeah, I was going to say on that topic, like we have people saying, we're gonna shut down your free speech because you're saying nasty things about Charlie Kirk. There's some emotional overreactions taking place on both sides. We need to, from an official standpoint, not be, we don't want to censor. I want the left to be free to say whatever vile things they want about Charlie Kirk and about the conservative movement and everything else. Because, so far they're pretty close to disqualifying themselves as a legitimate political force in the country. And I don't want to take a microwave phone away from them while they finish the job. Right.
right, and look, the administration may want to say, you do that, and we think that's hate speech, and we're going to go after you. But there is the First Amendment, and unless they're inciting people to go do harm
Right.
or mount an insurrection or something like that, that's not hate speech.
Right.
In the First Amendment.
And you're not obliged to like Charlie Kirk or admire him or feel sorry
Right,
he died or any of that.
right.
Say
So so
whatever
Pam so
classless thing
so
you want
Pam
to say.
Bondi's kind of got to get her message straight a little bit
Yeah,
more.
Bondi kind of overstepped on that. She,
Yeah,
we could come after you. No, you can't. You're not going to. And I
yeah,
think that when she got into the back room, Trump said, we're not doing that, right? Susie Wiles, whoever, no, quit talking about taking people's stuff,
yeah,
taking people's speech rights because we're not going to do it,
yeah.
right? And Trump, they keep saying he won't give speech rights, but people come up to him and say the most ridiculous things, right? And he doesn't do anything about it. So you must have speech rights in the country now, right? No
Right.
one's had more hate heaped on them than that guy, and he doesn't do anything to stop it.
And I think when you say that you're going to do that, then you're just playing into the left their hand.
Yeah, that's what
You know,
they do. We don't need to
right?
be we don't need
Yeah.
to be them.
No, we don't need to do that at all. All right. Well, so what the other thing, just really quickly too. So I just saw this morning as a result of Charlie Kirk's assassination. Milo Yiannopoulos is coming out of retirement now. For me, I can't say that I missed him. I'm not sure I'm actually looking forward to seeing him again. I don't know what he's really going to be doing. I don't know.
He's going to be talking about free speech, and he's going to be talking about you don't get to cancel people you don't like.
Yeah.
And I thought he was an interesting kind of character on the world stage. Before I look forward to seeing what he's going to do. I guess he's trying to do some more He's going to do these campus speaking things where he takes questions and so forth, like Charlie did. And he's a little harder pill for them to swallow because he I guess he says now he's formerly gay. He is gay, right? So, but I mean, he's well read and intelligent too, and he has things off the wall sort of you wouldn't think about that he says. So, he's welcome to the microphone as far as I'm concerned.
Milo's back. Yeah. If you missed him, I guess
then you're in good shape.
Yeah. All right. Well, shifting gears a little bit, we've got President Trump having a big deal out in the UK with King Charles and everything like that. And I don't know, but will there be some more trade talk or this going on out there? I don't know what's.
I mean, I think they're cementing the Western Alliance, right? This is what we're going to stand for. They're separate from EU, right? But if UK and the US agree on it, EU is going to have to try to find a way to go along. Is my theory on that. There's already the leftist saying that he, didn't walk where he's supposed to walk in relation to the king and all this stuff. The No Kings people are really serious about enforcing the royal protocol. So, but I mean, that's part of the deal is, Trump, he goes where they tell him to go. Right. But he doesn't pay minute attention to it. And I really don't care like what order they walk down the sidewalk in. It doesn't bother. Couldn't care less. Right. I kind of like that there's all these rules and he can just kind of magically, independently smears them.
There's the rules of the royals and there's the rules of Trump.
And never the twain shall meet. Right. But I do think it's important to say to the world, US and UK are united, for the same things we've always been united for. And, we think Europe is on our page. And if the Europeans are looking at their polling and their press clippings, they suggest that they should hug Trump fairly closely because that looks like the winning formula in Europe right now.
I should have invited just for this little segment the biggest royal watcher that I personally know, which is Megan Lott. So yeah, I don't know. I when she worked for AIM for the time she worked for AIM, that was one of the things I learned about her is that she loved the royals. She could not get enough of the royals. Me, I get like, it's like I'll watch some things. I watch some things, but I am not going to watch like hours worth of stuff.
Right.
I can't do it.
Right.
And they're interesting. I mean, I've watched those Netflix series, The Crown and stuff like that. I found those to be kind of interesting, but in general, you won't find me, paying a lot of attention to the royals and the protocol and all the drama that happens within the royals between,
right. But if you think about it, it's like, we play football when we were little kids, right? We played baseball out in the yard with our friends, right? And so that's part of why we watch it on TV. It's like we have a direct connection to that. We've done it ourselves, right? And what do girls do? They have high tea and they have tea parties and they dress up and so they have carriages. Like I never think about a carriage, but girls do, right? Oh, a carriage ride, ooh, right? And so this is their football in the front yard. This is their things they did as a little kid coming to life, the things they pretended. So yeah, I see why it tends to be women who are more curious about this stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have centuries of history and everything with this, and so you don't take that, you just don't take that away. And I mean, they're post, they're a ceremonial thing, right? I mean, they have no political power, but they
Literary
do,
power at all. Yeah,
but they're just there for doing the ceremonial stuff. And it's different. It's interesting. It's more. There's more with the the king or the queen of England, depending upon who's in power, than than any other royal family in the world that I've ever observed in my lifetime.
right.
There's more
And
interest.
this is a case where the royal family it's not Trump wanting to be closer to them; it's them wanting to be closer to Trump.
Right.
I think that's key to their survival.
Yep. Okay, I didn't put this on the list, but I did want to just throw this in here too, because it looks like the U.S. and China have come to what they call a framework on TikTok USA. I'm not sure this is really going to go through or what's going to happen here. Um, I don't know. I mean, I've never been on TikTok. I mean, the only TikTok videos I've ever seen is if they pop in my feed because somebody's put that in Instagram or somewhere else. Otherwise I wouldn't go watch this. But obviously, TikTok is a huge success and draws a lot of people to that. Um, and I don't know that TikTok USA really resolves all the concerns. And I don't know that China wants to see much in the way of this, because I think they've definitely benefited a lot from TikTok.
Well, I mean, I'm not an absolutist on the First Amendment, right? I think you can. There's fighting words and inciting violence and whatnot, but there's no, I don't think TikTok is well within what should be allowed, right? In the United States, it's well within the free speech framework. And if you want, it's the same thing as like we're saying, content and media. We were talking about gaming, we were talking about online, we were talking about message boards with Antifa guys, all that kind of stuff. We're going to, we need to make stronger the case that these things are linked, right? That when you do these things, it makes you more prone to violence, and here's how that works and so forth. Because right now, it's speculation. It's like we all, and we want to, we're politically motivated to do so. Like, when this guy, got arrested, everybody was waiting breathlessly. Can we paint him as left or right? And it turns out you can paint him as left, and they're trying to paint him as right. And they have a couple of little talking points on their side. Right. So, but the third party communication like drives you to kill someone. I'm not comfortable with that notion. I'm not comfortable with we should shut off media because it's having a bad influence on girls. Okay. Fix your girls, right? Fix how they, change how they value these things and how they react and how we react to them when they start going down these rabbit holes and so forth. But the idea that you can't let anybody read something because, it depressed some girls, I don't think that's fair either. I think the happy medium has to be, struck far more on the side of we can all access the information than it is.
Yeah, and I understand what Governor Cox is saying about this as being a cancer, but I think that the bigger thing here really is just that parents and you need to take responsibility here. Like with your children. I mean, is to watch what they're watching. Kind of be aware of what they're doing. Try to push them in the right direction. There's plenty of good stuff that happens on social media. Look at us. I mean, I thought we're pretty good.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, that's right. There's plenty of stuff you can get, and when this guy's parents, I mean, they always like, yeah, we noticed that he moved over to the hardcore left. Okay. What did you do when you noticed that? Now, it's okay to be a leftist. A lot of people, they're the one leftist in their family or the one conservative in their family. That doesn't necessarily make you a maniac or murderous, whatever. But, that's a big change, right? This kid, he grew up one way and all of a sudden they could see very clear signs that he was dramatically changing. What did they do? Right? Did they just say, "Hey, kids growing up, things happen," or did you keep talking to him? What was the conversation like? Because it seems to me that, like, if you're staying in that fight and you're talking to your kids every day, then these things can't happen like that. They can't. Oh wow, suddenly he's a radical leftist, and we've never said anything approving of radical leftists in this household in our lives, right? So how did that happen? How did it? You did notice it. You did see signs. You did see things that were bugging you, right? Supposedly he was at some family event a few weeks ago, and the whole family was disgusted with all the stuff he was saying. Okay, so something's going on with this guy, right? It should be pretty clear. And why don't we have these conversations then? Why did it take this to happen? Oh wow, he's messed up. Well, yeah, he's messed up, and the guy's dead.
Yeah, I mean, if you think it's perfectly fine to have your kids just sit in their rooms, they go to school, they come home, and then they sit in their room for the rest of the day, maybe emerge for dinner or something like that, but they're in their room doing who knows what, particularly with gaming and just on social media, doom scrolling and whatnot. Then you've got a potential problem there. If you can engage them in wholesome discussion, wholesome activities, healthy things that are better for them mentally and physically, I think the kids will be a lot better off in general overall. But we there are a lot of parents who kind of abdicated their responsibility to the internet and to social media. It's like you cannot blame as a whole social media for what happened to this kid. I mean, I think the parents, as nice as they may seem to be, they played a part in this by just not paying enough attention.
At some point, he tuned them out.
Right.
Right. And so, like, I don't really know about, my kids didn't tune me out. So I don't really, I can't really identify with that. But I think part of why they didn't tune me out is, I was in their life every day. We were talking. We didn't go off to rooms without explanation.
Right. And you were doing a lot of coaching, a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that was a regular involvement with them that I think made all the difference in the world. So those are kinds of things that happen, and some people don't see that. They don't really realize that, but it may seem like a little thing, but the little things matter.
Yeah.
In the larger perspective.
They notice where you are. All they want is your time,
Right. They do. They crave your time and attention. And if you don't,
you don't have to do anything. You don't have to fly them off to Hawaii or whatever.
Yeah.
They just want to talk or fish, whatever it is you do. They're willing to do it with you.
Yeah. Well, my daughter's pretty strict with her kids. And so she's pretty aware of what they do and has limited a lot of their activity. We've got the 13-year-old grandson, and I don't know if she's talked to, I think he's thinking about getting him a cell phone finally, because I think he'll need one if he starts getting involved in sports and stuff like that in middle school to high school level. But they don't just give their kids stuff like that because they say, oh well, everybody else has got it. She wants them to be responsible with it. So the kids, when we're with the kids, we notice, I mean, besides the fact that they're ridiculously busy in their lives with activities, they spend a lot of time with each other. They're in the family room or whatever, and 7 kids, 6 in the baby is like, wow, there's a lot of activity going on here. But it's very heartening to see that happen where they're close enough that they want to do that, and the parents are not seen as the enemy or anything like that. They're even as strict as my daughter is, they follow those rules, and I think that'll be good for them throughout the rest of their life. All right, we're getting closer to the end, and I'm not getting through much of this, but we'll keep going for just a little while longer. I did want to talk briefly too about this Kamala's book, just because it just kind of, the excerpts we saw, it's like, it was reckless of the Democrats to let Joe run. I was like, okay, thank you.
It's reckless to let you run.
Yeah.
I mean, that was really the reckless.
I mean, what about you?
Yeah, I guess that they figured they had no choice, right? It was like, because how else do you what kind of process can you put up at that moment, right? And if it's not the vice president, they wouldn't have been able to access the money he'd raised and all that. So I guess they didn't really feel like they had a lot of choice with her, But why didn't they? Because Democrats, what do they never do? They never let the people decide, right? If you think about it, they told Hillary to step aside for Barack. They told Bernie to step aside for Hillary. They told Buttigieg, Warren, and Bernie to step aside for Joe. I mean, the people didn't. They picked Hillary. They told Bernie, you're not popular enough to do this, and then she goes 3-22 in her last 25 primaries. Like, she was not popular enough to do it, and then she got beat because she was not popular enough to do it. So, the poobahs do not always make the great picks, and especially on their side. So. Although I guess they got away with the Biden. But so for her to say that, and then she called him, the day before to tell him the book's coming out and this is what it's going to say, and he supposedly cussed her out, and he didn't react well at all. So I don't see that. That is the pot calling the kettle black. If there's ever been a case of that, because she was completely incoherent. And at least he had the excuse of senility, right? She's 51 years old and she can't make a sentence.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, you want to sell books, you want to make some money, but she's going to this is definitely another way to fracture the party by throwing something out there and saying like, oh, we've made this, we never should have done this. The Democrats, we know we would talk about this for a long time now, really since the election of before, about how they can't get their act together, and they're looking at 2028, and they're not in very good shape at all, and so she does this, and she's not helping the cause at all for them. Which is fine with you and me, probably, right? I mean, we kind of like you said, let the Democrats talk. That's the best. That's the best thing for us.
Furnish extra microphones. Everyone hears it.
Yeah, we'll pay for some more stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Now, in conjunction with that, there was a story in the Wall Street Journal, which was interesting, about Joe Biden's inability to cash in on the post-presidency. He got a $10 million advance on his book, which he apparently is working on very fast and furious.
Yeah.
But the money is not coming like it has for past presidents. I mean, the Obama's got like $60 million, for memoirs. They've had all kinds of other deals, since they left office and whatnot.
Netflix.
Joe is struggling. They want to charge in the neighborhood of 300 to 500K per speech, and really no one wants to pay for that. Apparently, he did give a speech to some group for which, according to the Journal, there was a lot of grumbling about whether or not they actually paid the on the low end the 300 or not, and why they were doing that to begin with. So the Bidens were hoping for a bigger payday. They had taken out some kind of second mortgage on their beach house in Delaware. The 10 million helps, but I mean, he gets $250,000 a year as a retired, as a president, and $166,000 for his service in the House and Senate. So they've got that, and then Jill Biden's probably got something too. They didn't identify, whether or not she's got how much of a pension she may have from her previous stints.
They had a very expensive lifestyle.
Yeah,
that's part of why you had all the Hunter Biden doing the deals and all this. And he said, he had to give half the money to his dad. And if you look at what happened to that money, it got distributed around the family to cover, shopping trips and, expensive vacations and expensive houses. And, he was living in a, $9,000 a month house in Malibu and so forth. I mean, they just lived high off the hog with the money. And so now, the drying up USAID, that was a lot of the people who gave the money, right? The book advances are crooked, similarly crooked, right? That's a way to activists to funnel money to these guys, because no book company has the expectation that that Joe Biden could write a book that would get them $10 million back, right? There's no way, right, that they were going to sell $10 million worth of books by Joe Biden. right? Just the interest is not there. The thing about Obama was, even though he had served 2 terms as president, he was in theory out of politics. He was still, he's my age. He's younger than you. He was identified with the future of the party. Like when we're getting leaders, we're minting leaders for the national scene. They should kind of be like Obama because it worked for him, right? So but with Biden, he's not connected with, they're dedicated to the future, not looking anything like Joe Biden. They want it to like physically actually look different. So he's not part of the future. Why do you want to hear from him? It doesn't really bring a lot of prestige to your organization to have him as the featured speaker.
Right. Yeah, and just one more thing from the Journal article, which I thought was interesting, was so apparently, what Biden wants to do is that, he was hoping to have money that he could distribute to the kids to help them out, right? And so that's really not happening because Hunter owes his ex-wife millions of dollars.
Yeah,
and he doesn't have it. Gee, his art sales have dried up. I wonder why.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, exactly how is that going anyway? His art was really worth $500,000 here and there.
I thought it was really good. It turns out, I guess, other art critics did not agree.
Maybe I can get one on the cheap. I can hang it back here.
There you go.
I'll buy one for your your back wall too.
There you go. Thank you.
So this is just amazing about how what's happened here, But yeah, I don't know. The idea of somebody that's going to, you talked about just the book sales. The idea that people are willing to pay $300 to $500K to hear Joe Biden speak, that seems kind of ludicrous because he has trouble speaking.
Yeah, that's right.
He's not an orator. He's not good at this.
Especially not now.
Yeah, not now. And you can give him a teleprompter and he's still bad. So right. It's like, this is, the agency or whoever is pushing this, this is a pipe dream for me to think that
what does he really have to say?
Yeah,
I was a terrible president. Trump sucks.
Yeah, according to Brian. All right. All right. Just really quickly, I'm going to hit on some quick points here. Governor Hochul has endorsed Mandami. I guess she's hoping for a reciprocal. I don't think that Mandami cares about Hochul that much, but
right. Might not come back her way, but I think they're they're hitching their wagon to that to that horse, right? They're going to say we're going to be hardcore socialists. It'll be interesting to see how that works out for them. Okay, they're not going to get to redistrict, right? You saw that, so they're stuck with what they have, which favors Republicans.
All right. Also, the Republicans are they proposed a 7-week stopgap bill that takes them into November for spending. Democrats are objecting. Shutdown looms in about 2 weeks. I think they kicked the can down the road.
Yeah,
I think it
goes up very close to the last minute and then it gets soft.
Yeah, both sides are going to stare down at the last minute and realize that they need, they'll probably need more time, and we'll just kick a can down the road and then try to fix it a little bit later.
Yeah, I think they need to get up in front of the election, though, get something semi-permanent done, because what's going to happen is, Democrats are likely to win here. I think in New Jersey, the Republican may win. It's closer to a toss-up than it is here. Although it's not over here yet. So, the Democrats will say, hey, we have a mandate to, you got to listen to us because Spanberger beat Winsome Sears.
Yeah. I don't necessarily see that if that happens, but, we shall see. But yeah, that's a good point. Actually, it would help if they actually got something done before these elections, even though these are a couple off-year elections. They're, they do give us a little bit of an idea of where we're going, but it's not the midterms either. So on a bigger scale, Fed rate decision, Federal Reserve rate decision coming, expecting a quarter-point rate cut.
We've got half a point.
Yeah, it could be half a point. We've got Stephen Moran on the Fed board now, so we know he'll cast a vote for lowering rates. And we will see.
The market is still on for now, and even more anti-Trump than she was before. Here's the thing about that. So, The president can't fire. If they're going to fire somebody from the Fed, that has to be for cause, and she's been criminally referred, but she has not been charged with mortgage fraud, and now they may not do it because they're finding that some of their own people have done the same thing. But if they do charge her, I could see that would improve Trump's case on for cause, right?
Yeah, I'm not convinced that what she did is something that has not happened to others before. That's just, I don't know. Mortgages, this sometimes can become a little bit arcane, and you get a little bit in there and like, okay, well, what do people say, or how do people do this? Did they truly represent? Are they saying that they're willing to go to jail over this? I don't know. So we'll wait and see how if she gets charged and they push forward with it, that bolsters Trump's case. But if they don't move forward on it, then I think that he just needs to maybe let that one go and then look elsewhere. There's an outside chance that when Powell's term is up as the head of the Federal Reserve, that he might just go ahead and leave and early before his term ends. But then again,
there's some pressure. There's some indication.
He could always just thumb his nose at Trump and just stick around. So, but anyway, I saw that Brad Raffensperger in Georgia is going to run for governor. I don't know how much. I don't know if that makes. I don't even know who else is in that race right now. I don't know how much difference it makes. We just need to make sure that Georgia's got a good, solid candidate, in there for governor. So
yeah, I'm not I don't know that you'll ever get a solid person for that job. Just the nature of what you got to do to win an election there. It's a total rhino now, and it'll probably be a total rhino next time.
Right. And then finally, Donna Brazile is urging Eleanor Holmes Norton not to run for
the Post and the unsigned editorial the same day. She said that Donna Brazile's piece hit that Eleanor Holmes Norton should step down. I interrupted before you.
No. Go ahead. That's fine.
And the Washington Post then had an unsigned from the editorial board editorial the same day saying, Donna Brazile's right. She's not effective. Like her like speeches before the House have gone down to basically nothing. She used to be a fiery speaker. She did all the 5-minute speeches. I mean, that's her chance to talk, right? Because she doesn't get a vote. So, but her activity's reduced, and she's way up in her 80s. So
she's 88.
88. So that's way up. So she's probably done. And I think if those people are aligning against her, it's going to be hard for her to survive.
Right. Okay.
But the problem with which is always the problem with the district is, the apex political position of the entire district political scene is mayor and non-voting member of Congress, right? So why would anybody with real political talent stay in that situation, right? Wouldn't you just move somewhere where you can get into Congress, at least get a vote in Congress? So, you're never going to have it's always going to be people like it is now. Party hacks, basically.
Yep. And final note, my hats off so far to Lori's Mariners and the big dumper. Cal Raleigh is having a heck of a season. He's now broken Mickey Mantle's record for home runs by a switch hitter. That's a big feat.
That's a huge feat. So, they play this weekend. They play the Astros this weekend. And basically it will decide the division probably.
Yeah.
And
I mean, we've got only a handful of games left.
Yeah, it's like 10. I think we have 10 left, and they have 9. Or they have 11 because they have one more than us. They play Thursday, and we don't. So, but yeah, it's going to come right down to her team against my team. Quiet around here over the weekend. I mean, you think about that. It's like have you ever, like, you and your wife been for separate teams? You ever been watching a game and I'm like, I want Team X and she wants Team Y?
Not really, because she's not a big sports fan.
Yeah,
we tend to be on the same side. I mean, the thing is that she came from Korea, right? I mean, so she didn't build really any loyalty here for anything except the home team. So, and I grew up here, so I have a home team. I mean, if she had decided that she was going to be an Orioles fan, that probably would have steamed me a little bit. But you know, we,
Yeah,
she
but I
doesn't
mean, most
she
people, this
doesn't
is
she
not an
doesn't like
issue in their
baseball.
marriage, right? But us, it's like we ain't gonna talk.
All right. Well, that's good. That's a fun note to end on. Also, congratulations to Shohei Ohtani, who continues to do marvelous and
Yeah.
magnificent things in baseball. So, kids, keep
Last
looking
night,
up.
like he hit his 50th homer, but he also
Yeah,
had a no hitter through 5 innings,
yeah.
and then
And the
they,
team
they took
lost
him
because
out and
of
they blew the lead.
yeah, the bullpen imploded again.
Yeah,
So anyway, even with Shohei out there, they still couldn't do it. Maybe they should have kept him out there another inning. So anyway, thanks everyone for joining us. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week. And one of these days, this show will be shorter.